All right, welcome nerds to the
Nerd.
Nerdified podcast. I am the Wilhelm Scream,
Cranberry Lanters, hello.
Cape is lie. Hello.
and we are discussing personally one of my favorite cartoon shows, Samurai Jack. Um, it's
Samurai.
a awesome Cartoon Network show that came out in 2001 and has been pretty much one of the coolest and most underrated shows, I think, for Cartoon Network. A lot of people don't talk about it that much, but I actually fell into the show about 2 years ago and got hooked, and I pretty much binged the entire thing and have loved it. So, first and foremost, though, I want to talk to you guys about what your favorite battle or fight is from Samurai Jack.
Involving only Samurai Jack or just the
In
show
general,
Samurai Jack?
from the
And
entire series, what is your favorite fight?
okay. Well, both of them are the same for me, so you know.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right.
Um,
All right.
so there were a couple notable fights that I really enjoyed. I think the one that kind of takes the cake for me as of this moment is going to be Samurai Jack versus Set's minions. I
Oh,
really enjoyed that fight, and I thought it was pretty cool. Um, he goes through after the minions are released, and they're kind of just like kicking his butt, man. Like
Yeah.
he's getting torn up like left and right, and he kind of figures out like, okay, as a kid, this is where I read this, and this is where I need to go to figure out what I need to do. And so he manages to make his way there without getting killed. Figures it out, and then he's got to go through like all these like different steps and processes, and puts this golden scarab beetle together. And at the end of the episode, like you see the protector. Sorry, air quotes. So I'm
Yeah.
throwing up the fingers, the air quotes here. The protector come down, and he just like, I don't know if he like looks at him and like zaps him with his eyes, but yeah, they're just like, they're kind of like shaking, and you can tell like they're trembling in fear while the protectors come down to take care of business.
Oh, he does zap
And
them with his eyes. The protector does zap the set's minions with his eyes.
it is with his eyes. Okay, I wasn't entirely sure about that, but I was pretty sure that it was his eyes.
Yeah.
But
It
there's
was
like
really
a
cool,
whole,
by the way. The how it showed them disintegrating, showed those lines. I was like, that is the perfect way to disintegrate
yeah,
beings.
kind of like a fuzzy TV kind of thing, and then they just like
yeah.
kind of completely disappear, which is awesome. And then Jack, like at the very end of everything, hops up and he's like, "Hey, I know you just defeated these guys, but can you tell me where a time portal's at?" And the thing just like looks at him and is like, "Nope, out of here! Like I'm done dealing with you," and takes off. And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then you see him like trying to light a fire at the very end of the episode, just like.
Yeah.
I'm almost dead, and I just escaped by the skin of my teeth. And this deity just popped up in here. Well, still gotta live.
I still
Yeah,
gotta live.
exactly. Amazing, like huge creature thing that just saved his life takes off, and he's just like, "Well, I guess I'll just start this fire here."
Yeah,
Great
just
episode.
juxtapose the incredible mind world blowing, expanding thing with just basic livelihood task and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I thought was really cool about that episode, though, was like the correlation between future and past. So he's in the future, but it's something from the past that's even before him that comes back, and he has to fight against it, and then winds up beating it in the future, which is pretty crazy.
I kind of
Um,
thought you'd like that.
So awesome. Yeah.
yeah. Notable mention: the graveyard fight scene when basically Aku kicks his butt, and he's sitting there and he's about to get stabbed by his own sword, and then it's like tink, and he's like, "Yeah, you can't kill me with that because it doesn't allow evil to do evil things with it." So
That's right.
yeah.
So good.
Nice. Good choices. Very
Thanks.
solid.
Cranberry Landers, favorite fight?
Mine, I have two favorites. Those were both really good choices, by the way. My two favorites, but okay, my first, the runner-up, I think, would be it would be the fight in like the Egyptian kind of place where it was between Aku and Samurai Jack, and he presented all those fake swords, all the fake samurai swords. It was between him and they were having like a no powers fight. I really enjoyed that one, but I think the top fight would be the daughters of Aku. I believe that's what they're called, but it's like it's from the 5th season, and it was when the duplicates, the quadruplets or quintuplets or whatever, sextuplets, well, when the daughters who all look the same, and they have the leftover one who lives, I forget her name, but Ashi, when the one that Ashi survives, or the Ashi as the last survivor, I loved that fight. That is my top fight, I think. It's kind of hard because there's some that are less notable and they didn't have a lot of effect. I think some of the fights between Aku and some other people that aren't Samurai Jack, I thought some of those fights were great, but this one stood out to me when he was fighting all of them. It's the first time you really see him bleed, see Samurai Jack bleed, and it's the first time you see him cause actual bleeding, at least substantial bleeding and death to the other characters. And I just love the design, the character, the figure designs for these for the characters, and as they moved and everything, the physicality and the lighting and everything. I loved it. And yeah, the runner-up, I guess, would be the one where they fight depowered. But there were some gorgeous fights. The other samurai, Duh Samurai, that one was pretty good.
Duh Samurai.
Yeah, that was a pretty good fight. But
yeah,
those would be my favorites. And of course, I mean, season 5 and their fights, like all 4 cylinders were firing, or all 6 cylinders. I don't know. All 4 cylinders are firing at the same time, and it was just great.
What kind of engine do we have here? Is this a 4-banger? Is it a V6? I mean,
it's a V6. Yeah.
Okay.
it's V6.
Okay, 6 cylinders. Got it.
6 cylinders. 6 heads. Anyways,
yeah, the last season is they take the art style, the fighting style, everything, and amp it up to like 10. You can really tell, if you don't know, the show originally only had 4 seasons and ended, I believe, around like 2007 or 2006. And then from there, it was not on hiatus, it was ended, but it didn't really actually have a finale. And then around 2017, they brought the show back for one last season. Gendy Tartakovsky was able to finish his story and finish Samurai Jack's adventure, and there's way more money put behind it. You can tell that there's way more freedom by the creative team to be able to do a lot more, and it's awesome. And
beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful, intense, really, really well done, and I think is super cool, and we'll talk more about that. My personal favorite fight, though, I'm kind of a simple man. I really, really love the fight between Jack and the ninja. The single black ninja that he fights in the tower. He gets stalked by this ninja for pretty much 3/4 of the episode, just being followed, and you see Jack looking out like giant robotic lobsters and stuff and protecting this like seaside village
with the white and the black design. Wow.
All you see is him utilizing his ability to use stealth against this robotic ninja that Aku hires or trains basically to go out and take out Jack. And so you see the black and white and the contrast and seeing this awesome use of value and lighting throughout the entire fight scene of them just going from like really, really stark darkness to really, really bright, vibrant white. And every time they're hitting each other, ting, there's a spark, and you're seeing a little illumination of each person. And then over the course of like, the fight feels way longer than it actually is. It's like a 5-minute fight, but it feels like you're watching it for the 15 minutes of the episode. And it is just so awesome. Every time they hit, there's sparks. Every time one thinks the other one's there, they're missing, or and they bring down all the sound on everything to where it's very quiet. And by the end of it, the sun is going down, so there's going to be more darkness in the building. The ninja's going to have more advantage. He's going to be able to finally take out Jack. It's a robot, so it's not relying on that kind of stuff. And you're going to have
Samurai Jack's all in white.
Yeah, and Jack is completely robed in white right now, covering his face. So all you can see is his eyes, which is just like what you see at every end of the episode. So it's awesome. And then you see, as the sun's going down, the light diminishing and shrinking down and cutting away more and more darkness is taking over in the building. And Jack finally stops trying to see where the ninja is, and he just like quiets kind of everything, closes his eyes, and hears the press of the foot of the ninja on the wood beam around him, and it gives him just enough of an edge to be able to go boom, and he reflects the sun slightly, blinding the ninja for a fraction of a second, and at the same time throws his sword and pins him to the wall. So sick. Oh, so good. And then as he's just sitting there, he like is looking down and realizes, I've been defeated. And Jack's just standing there, takes off his mask. And then the weight of the robot slides down the blade and just splits his head in half, and he falls off into the abyss of the tower. And then Jack just finishes the end of the episode and makes his way out of the situation. That's so good. So good.
That
like,
last
super
hit.
Simple. Wait, what?
That last hit was gorgeous. That is one of the best hits I had seen in the entire show. I was like, I wish I could watch that on replay or in slow motion for like, I don't know, 20 hours or something and really break it down. It was amazing. How he shines the light, hits him with the sword while he's in the air, and then pins him to the thing, and then he falls apart. It's perfectly cinematic and like the guy is divided and everything is beautiful.
Totally. Thomas, aka the Cape is a Lie, is going to finish the show right now.
Yeah, because he never watched the full show.
He never got to finish the final episode, so he's actually going to go finish that right now.
He watched to the first part of the episode.
And it's going to be a pretty awesome event because we are going to then get the live reaction immediately after he finishes. He's getting right back on here, and we are going to discuss fresh, brand new thoughts of the opinion of the overall series and what the final episode was like. And I'm genuinely curious. So we will say adieu for a moment to Cape is a Lie.
He might pop in. And he might pop in time to time if he has a comment or something, but he should be focusing on the episode. He should. Yeah.
But Cranberry Langers, we would like to know though, obviously that episode shows Samurai Jack against a single foe. The other fight that I really, really love though is I think it's like the third episode is when you first see him go up against the massive swarm of bug bots.
With the dogs? The dog fight?
Yeah.
He's in the dog fight.
And it's a dog fight. And I really, really love that episode too, and that fight in particular, because I think it kind of sets the overall tone of the show really well, showing that it's not just like a basic kids cartoon. It's highlighting that there's a big push on action, and action that is highly stylized and very reminiscent of like classic samurai films and stuff, and kind of like the 70s era kung fu movies and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really love that fight because it's brutal. He's slicing these giant robots in half and stuff, and oil is squirting everywhere instead of showing actual blood, and I'm totally fine with it, honestly, because then when you do see how he reacts to his first kill in the 5th season, he's not killing robots. They're not just nuts and bolts. It means even more, and I think it has a much greater impact. But I love that fight.
I think they did it with the oil and all the machines because it was a kiddie cartoon and they couldn't get away with showing blood.
Oh,
and so
100%.
I think it did have impact. I think that there was symbolism there, but I think that I think that the 5th season, if anything, it was them doing what they wanted to do since the outset, which was I think it would have been better if he saw blood before that. But again, they had constraints with Cartoon Network and stuff. So
sure,
I agree.
I think it also is walking a kind of fine line because you have the idea that Aku is this evil being who hurts people, and so it shows and highlights the good quality of Jack because he's purposely not hurting humans. He's taking out other robots and stopping them. But I feel like I should identify the fact that first and foremost, the main plot to Samurai Jack is he's a samurai who has his kingdom attacked and parts of the world attacked by Aku, the shape-shifting master of darkness. Basically, this giant demon that is very reminiscent of classic Chinese and Japanese demon imagery. What you see for like a samurai helmet, the giant teeth and everything, that's who you're looking at, only it's Aku. You see him attacking the world and attacking Jack's kingdom. Jack is taken away as a child and trained to be the perfect warrior. So he learns from Robin Hood, he learns from the Greeks, he learns from different tribes in Africa, he learns boats, everything that you can think of, how to ride horses properly, take out people using a sword, using a shield, using bow and arrow, every form of combat available he learns, and he has a magic sword that has been ultimately through the course of the show you find out is created and smithed by the gods to kill and defeat evil. And so you have him with this samurai
Aku
sword.
specific, but
what?
Aku specifically, but
specifically
evil.
Aku, and it's created to be able to defeat him and defeat evil. And so it's basically it's indestructible and able to defeat pretty much anything, which makes it awesome because he takes out so much stuff with it. It's really, really cool to see. You also end up seeing him use his other skills that he learned previously as a child, how to use like fighting techniques with a bow and arrow, that kind of stuff.
Where is he fighting? Where is he fighting him then? Or when is he fighting them? When is he fighting them, I should ask.
He goes to attack Aku, and he's using as much ability as he can to try and defeat Aku. But Aku, being a very powerful evil being, sends him to the future, where his evil is law. And you have the character completely thrust away from everything that he's ever known, everything that he's familiar with, and he's dropped into a cyberpunk-looking future that's run by a demon. Like it's crazy and really intense. Right as he's about to defeat Aku, he opens a portal and is sent forward in time. And from there, it's all about his journey to defeat whoever he can find whatever he can to try and defeat Aku, find Aku, and then eventually get back in time and stop Aku, so that way this future never occurs. And it's awesome. It's fantastically done. The art style is very, very Genndy Tartakovsky, who also did the early 2000s Clone Wars show from Star Wars, where it's almost like a 2D image, but it fits really, really well, I think, with this show because it's very reminiscent of simple, like, not cuneiform, but similar, like Japanese
Cubist
art style. What style?
Cubist.
Well, no, more like when you think of like a
they have a flat,
or like the simple brushstroke.
Yeah, they have
style.
a flat layout. It's 2D, but yeah, they might have like 3D environments, but 2D depictions of people and objects and stuff.
Yeah, battles and that kind of stuff. Very, very much specific to Japanese and Chinese culture and how they presented their artwork. And this feels very reminiscent of that, but with a more modern spin to it. So I think Genndy Tartakovsky's art is fantastic. And I am really curious, Cranberry, is what your thoughts on the show is, because I was the one that was recommending it to you because I love this show and I thought it was so cool. And I know that you were a little trepidatious to watch it. You weren't 100% on it, and I'd like to know what you think.
I think it's a good show. I like a bit more dialogue. I like some more story happening. They did have story points. It was I think and Samurai Jack was created in the early days of Cartoon Network. It was one of the founding cartoons, I believe, of Cartoon Network.
Yep.
And it was when they were just starting out and just becoming creative and stuff. And so I think at that time in Cartoon Network and in children's programming and just cartoons in general, they were episodic. There weren't so many through lines, or the story. There wasn't so much of a through line with the story, or the story. It wasn't like updated every episode. So you'd have more standalone episodes, and some story points. And that's something that was that's what most of Samurai Jack was, just standalone episodes, but they would have some story progression in some of the stories, in some of the episodes, but it wasn't like every episode you had story progression. I think it's a good show. I really love the design of the scenes, and I love some of the graphics and some scenes of how they took place and everything, lighting and I would say panel design, but there are no panels here. It's just it's actually panel designs from comics. They do it's how how the panels, how the blocks, the little squares are built up and everything, and how they look.
There are clear moments in this that do feel very reminiscent of comics and also of like classic samurai movies and stuff. Where
I would say if you were looking for a modern kind of if you were looking for a modern pairing to this, a modern movie, live action movie that you would say would be similar, I would suggest looking at one of like Kill Bill or something. Kill Bill movies. I would say it'd be similar to that in how the scenes play together, how the camera functions and everything. A lot of quick cuts and everything, and it's very cinematic.
The visual storytelling is very very clearly influenced by like 70s era kung fu movies and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it was beautiful. I think with every season they got bolder and they understood what the flavor of the show was going to be as it progressed. I think that they got down to what they wanted, more of how they wanted the show to be since from the outset, and you saw that progress. The fifth season really stood out, and that's where I think they like cut the brakes. I mean, they took out all the stops, and they just went full bore with the vision that they had for the show, and the layout and the scene, like the design of the scenes and everything. I think that they got the closest they'd ever attempted to get to what the core of what they wanted the show to be, and how they wanted it to look. And so I just saw that progress throughout. It was a bit more cartoony at the beginning. It was less serious in tone because they were selling it to children, and they wanted it to be picked up by kids. It was a cartoon mainly with some serious aspects, but by the last season, I think it really got to what the core of it was, which was it's a ninja story. It's ninjas, and there's fighting and killing and stuff like that. And you saw the character design. It was really kind of opposing. You had like it opposed each other. You had the really cartoony talking animal stuff, and they were really not anatomically correct and everything. And I know the style doesn't lend to it as being anatomically correct, but at the end of the show, it was really realistic. I mean, they really got down to it was almost an entirely different show. Not really, but I mean, it was is an opposite of what the first one was. The other one was really cartoony. This was really focused on realism, aside from the environments and some of the characters, but it was just very much people focused, or things that looked like people.
Yeah, I would say the first 4 seasons they tended to be because it was kind of episodic, and you didn't have to worry about going through every single episode, and just kind of you could jump around because it wasn't readily available at the time. You were just watching a random episode. It was more like the classic story of, oh, Jack wanders into an unknown situation, or he's searching for something specific that he hears about. And then from there, he has to fight or outsmart or whatever, or befriend someone in that situation. And ultimately, he either gets to his goal, and the goal ends up being for naught, or he ends up finding out that it was never a real possibility in the first place, or he needs to then progress and move on to whatever's really important, which is ultimately stopping Aku. And so even though I've made friends along the way, I have to leave them and move on. And then once you get into that fifth season, the fifth season is one solid story. It's basically the Samurai Jack movie at that point. And it makes me really think of Batman, the animated series, BTAS, from the 90s,
with the
kind of the same idea.
Oh.
Like you have a character, the hero, who is jumping around doing these random adventures that could kind of be intermixed here and there. But ultimately you have Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which is a full-length film, but feels like a bunch of episodes just like strewn together into one big story. And it informs on the character in a much more serious way, where the show had moments of seriousness and shows character development and all that kind of stuff. And then you have this final season that goes, oh, no, we're talking about the real ramifications of a person being here for, spoiler alert, 50 years. He ends up staying in the future for 50 years and does not age. And
Not in
what's
the
that?
Phantasm, not in the Mask of the
Not
Phantasm.
Mask of Phantasm, but Samurai
Jack.
Jack. But just like how Mask of the Phantasm informs on the character of Batman and Bruce Wayne, and also the Joker and everything else, fantastic, by the way. Absolutely go watch it. You should do yourself a favor. I think it's the best Batman movie. And then you have Samurai Jack in a similar situation in his final season, the fifth season, where it's informing on who he is as a person, what he's dealing with as far as what happens to a person psychologically when they're given the goal of stopping a threat and they can't do it. And then you also find out that he loses his sword at one point and has to go and find it, and how he's basically just trudging around stopping threats, but is getting no forward momentum whatsoever. And
the guy that and his threat, it's not only that he can't defeat him, it's that he completely abhors his enemy. He hates him with every fiber of his being. He hates this opponent, this threat, and still nothing you do actually gets rid of the threat. All you do is see more suffering and the people that you know die and pass on, and you're stuck there with this guy that you can't do anything about and you hate.
And all you can do is keep fighting, but every step that you take ultimately has no fruition. There's nothing coming from it. Yeah, it's awesome. They do some really cool, really dark stuff with the character in the final season. And you also get introduced to the Daughters of Aku, which is a super creepy cult that is centered around worshippers of Aku that have young children that are turned into weapons and have an aspect of Aku imprinted onto them. They are really cool, really, really creepy, dark, hardcore stuff.
They're bred not to have. They're bred only to hate Samurai Jack.
Yeah,
and they're also bred to not have any kind of personal opinions differing from the brainwashing they received.
Yep.
And they're deadly, and they're shown not to have compassion, and they're raised to the point where they can kill, or they can attempt to kill the ones who raised them. And yeah, I thought it was like the most realistic. That's the thing that I appreciated about it. It seemed the most realistic in human how they interacted together. In the course of the show, I thought it was the most realistic portrayals of people and what actually happens in reality, despite the supernatural aspect.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting to see. Pretty much throughout the entire show, whenever you see Aku interacting with like humanity, he's the antagonist. He's the bad guy. Everybody hates him and they see him as evil. So it was interesting that they took it in the direction of finally going, oh, what is it like when there's a group of people that have been around Aku for hundreds and hundreds of years, to the point where not only do they accept his rule, but they actually love him. They want to be like him. They want to share in his anger and his evil, because he outright says, like, I'm the shape-shifting master of darkness. Like, I am evil incarnate. And what's it like when you have humanity, people who throughout the whole rest of the series have avoided it and tried to stop him, instead delve into their darker impulses and their more evil side and use his abilities and stuff. And you see what happens when they're using his abilities to try and hunt down the one person that could actually stop Aku, Samurai Jack. It's really cool to see like how twisted they take these characters. So As far as the Daughters of Aku go, I think that was really cool that they decided to take the characters or the world in that direction, a little bit darker, have a little bit more of Aku's influence in the world. Because throughout the entire series, you do see a lot of like how his selfishness and kind of stuff has influenced the rest of the world. But also you see like aliens and stuff like having come to Earth and whatnot, since it's so far in the future and the technology is super advanced, but also it's kind of like a dystopian place at the same time. Um, I just found that really, really cool to see this weird take on like almost like a Batman Beyond future, but if it was run by like, I don't know, like Mephisto from Marvel Comics. So, what are your thoughts on like the choice of the Daughters of Aku, and also kind of how kind of what the world is like overall?
Well, I just saw at the in the fifth season, at the end of the fifth season, or at the fifth season, the world is pretty much, I'd say, like 95% conquered by Aku, around there. And then I really appreciated the Daughters of Aku, and I really appreciated it because I thought that it was a very good reflection of how the world actually is, and that these people who are raised around an entity, a person that is really evil, but they're raised around it their entire lives. They're inculcated in it, and they're brainwashed by these people, these representatives or advocates for this being. I just saw it as a reflection of our world, like we have in China, we had in Germany, we had in Venezuela. You have these people who are brought up in this place, and either through wanting ease in life and wanting to get by, they don't resist or they partake, or people who come to believe the hype or come to believe the propaganda that these people are actually good and that they're virtuous or whatever. They come to start partaking in these actions, and they ally themselves with with Aku, with this being, but they ally themselves with these groups, and they come to believe that they are serving the good, and perpetrate heinous actions to serve this thing that they believe is a god, or that they begin to worship. And yeah, I think that you can see the fact that they actually find Samurai Jack to be the utmost evil, and how they would have these interactions between people who are completely for this evil being or group, or if and someone who's actually good, who's actually virtuous and actually doing good, and that conflict that they have. I really appreciated that. And it was just really real to me, despite the character designs and everything, despite the world. I found that they increased the realism in the last season with the way it looked, and also with how these people are, and with the way it looked and how the people acted and behaved. I just thought that was great realism that it added to, and I thought it was something that they were driving at in Samurai Jack since the first season. Another thing that I really loved, I just loved the introduction of Samurai Jack in the fifth season, in the final season. I just thought it was awesome. But yeah, those are my thoughts about. I thought he was a boss, but those are my thoughts on the fifth season and pretty much the show. I think it's a good show. I wanted to see more after the end of the final season. I wanted to see more of Samurai Jack and what he did in that new life, in that new version of reality, after that new timeline, after he comes back. But I think The Cape is a Lie might have.
Yeah, The Cape is a Lie. It looks like you finally finished the final episode of season 5.
How'd you like it?
Thoughts?
It was good.
I agree.
That sucks. Like,
Yes, yes, indeed.
Oh man,
Yeah.
he finds his love and then has it taken from him because she doesn't exist without the most evil being in the world. So,
Yeah.
that sucks so bad.
I saw it coming. I saw it coming before the.
It's a paradox. I mean,
exactly.
she's not there unless he's there, but I think there's ways around that she could have stayed. I did like the very end as he's walking away, going through like the gray, gloomy forest, and then he has like the bright, vibrant ladybug land on his finger, and he smiles, and then everything just kind of like brightens up with color.
Right.
And color comes back, and then you see the cherry blossom tree above him, which kind of also has a resemblance to Aku.
Yeah, it has like a weird resemblance to Aku and Ashi at the same time because it's like light and delicate while also having like this clear, stark contrast of like really deep red, like and pink, and then really deep dark black. Yeah.
So when I first heard of Samurai Jack and I attempted to watch the first episode, I was very into like samurais and Japanese culture and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I disliked this art style so much. Like,
you have to get used to it for sure.
Yeah, and as I sat there and watched the episodes, like I did start to get used to it, and then I found an appreciation for it, and I actually liked it. I did realize I noticed that you guys had talked about like the comic book kind of feel to it, along with you made another
reference
comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it kind of throws me back to like 2D video games.
Yeah.
And it kind of has like that kind of like 2D platformer kind of feel to it, which I thought was kind of cool to like see that. And then like also, like I remember when this show first came out and where we were at like in technology and stuff back then, and as far as graphics goes, and like there are video games today that match the graphics of this show, which I think is pretty cool. Like you could literally make a video game of this, play through it, and like,
and that's basically what they've done with Samurai Jack Battle Through Time, which came out I think it came out about 2 years ago. And that is basically you running through a miniaturized version of the entire series, including the final season. And so obviously you've The Cape is a Lie, you've just finished the series, so you saw that very like definition of bittersweet ending of him finally going back in time, finally having defeated Aku, using his blade to stop him and
stab him right through the head.
Yeah, stab him in the head, and then absorb him into the blade, and then strike it into the ground, destroying his giant, massive, creepy tower.
Yeah.
And then you have the really beautiful moment of him being able to be with Ashi, and they go home. He goes back to his kingdom. He sees his family, his parents again, and everything, and you get to have that really awesome moment. All of the people that trained him show up to the wedding and everything, and it's so beautiful. You get to have that final victory moment, and she gets completely enrobed in a beautiful white
wedding dress
gown. And then you have Jack dressed up. He's no longer in his solid white kimono. He's now in a black kimono, looking fresh, if I say so myself. And then he's standing at the end of the altar waiting for her to arrive, and she's walking down the aisle, and then she collapses.
And halfway down the aisle, like, ugh.
and he literally dashes down, holds her in his arms, and then she ceases to exist because
disappears.
the timeline no longer exists because he's defeated Aku in the past.
Without Aku, I don't exist. And those are her final words, like, oh.
The other thing is that
emotional kick in the groin, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Well, there's quite a bit there. It was kind of like a disemboweling, like reached in and took out all of his internal organs. That's pretty much what it was, that experience right there.
Emptied the man out emotionally. And
it's like you beat him, but you don't beat him all at the same time.
The thing is, it was a hope that he had, and he indulged in that hope, even though he saw the repercussions of Aku for 50 plus years. He still had hope that he was gonna get her back and not lose her, even though her father was Aku. And he allowed himself to indulge in that, like he also indulged in his fantasies and everything else in those 50 years. He indulged in this thing that wasn't there. He indulged in these images that weren't there, and she wasn't there. He let himself be vulnerable to his enemy, his mortal enemy. Another thing is, I don't think she left. She did leave, and in the most important sense, she died, and her clothes remained there. So things that were involved, he actually came back aged. So once he destroys Aku, even though it's in the past, he himself stays there, and he still has memories, I'm guessing. That's another thing I wanted to see sorted out. I wanted to see him fight after that and see if he retained his skills and stuff. But but she goes away, her clothes remain, but I see the ladybug as her. So like a non-reincarnation, but another instance of her. And she won't be, her existence won't be fulfilled. She won't actually be human, but I see that the ladybug as an extension of her, that and the tree. But that was
I was gonna say that I think both of those kind of symbolize, and it's something that they always show throughout the entire series, is the world that Aku has made is dark and evil, and things have been destroyed. There's black. There's really horrible like gray coloration, and stuff is destroyed and stuff. But then there's always that little moment of hope, that little moment of relief, where you see something beautiful. And I think it's always showing the fact that Jack is on a constant journey, and that he needs to have that hope. He needs to have that thing to grab onto. And even if at the end of the show, which is canon, he loses his love, ultimately he still has hope at the end of it. And he gets to see the ladybug, like you were saying, Cranberry, you were saying how it's almost like a symbol of who she is to him. And so he still sees life, he still sees what's around him, and how he's not just lost in his sorrow. And I think the tree also kind of shows that, something that is really beautiful and delicate, yet really terrible moment, so we can still appreciate it. What is even sadder, though, is I beat the game of Samurai Jack: A Battle Through Time last night, and there's a final secret ending. The first ending is just basically the last few minutes of Samurai Jack, the show, where they blow up the tower, Aku gets defeated, and it explodes, and then Jack just kneels down to Ashi and goes, "Oh, he's finally gone. He's never going to hurt anyone ever again." And then it just ends. The secret ending, if you 100% the game, basically has it go back to the past, and he goes back to his kingdom with Ashi, and you get to see all the same people that show up, all the people that have trained him previously, that were awesome in their own fighting styles and stuff, and they all show up to the wedding, and he sees his parents, and he's in his kimono and everything, and it looks really great. And she doesn't die. She doesn't disappear. She stays, And the end of the game is actually instead of him standing at the foot of that beautiful lotus cherry blossom tree, he's actually, his hair is unkempt and it's long, but he's still in his like robes, and he's leaning up against the tree, and you think that he's alone, but then Ashi is leaning up against him as it pans out, and they just look at each other and then close their eyes and have like a really content smile on their face, and it just fades out, and you see both of them very small, leaning up against this beautiful cherry blossom tree. And it's so much worse because you know that it's not canon, it's just the game. So if you
that's a better ending.
I know, that's what I think. I'm like, oh, and everybody on YouTube and everything is talking about it, being like, oh, that I want this to be the canon ending. Come on.
I have issues with the time paradox in the show.
I agree.
So her whole thing is that, oh, well, I can't exist if Aku doesn't exist. Well, the thing is he did exist. So therefore, he could exist. She just came back from the past. She had all of his powers. Why is she considered lesser if she has all of its powers? Right? It doesn't quite add up and make sense.
So to dig into the idea of the paradox, I think the reason she can't exist, although she should have ceased to exist the minute Aku was defeated, but for the sake of storytelling, I know why they didn't, because it's so much more impactful.
They wanted the gut punch
to see him just get everything taken away from him. But the idea, I think, makes sense because she is of a timeline that is predicated on the idea that Aku is not only alive, but fully functioning, causing influence. If he's taken away, that influence ceases to exist, that future ceases to exist. Butterfly effect kind of showing, oh, if Aku never stepped on that butterfly, that cult never existed. She was never born. She was never influenced by Aku and never became something.
Right. So I understand why. A whole separate timeline, though.
That depends.
With the Avengers
and
Loki. I mean, this is talking like whole separate timeline.
It depends on your version.
In the past, and she's there existing after Aku died.
That's true.
She can still exist.
Because it's like, are you going by? Are you going to go by
it depends on your
interpretation of time, or are you going to go by like Back to the Future rules?
Depends on,
like it's all about the quantum mechanics of, oh, is a person who is transplanted from their timeline. They went back in time. They're now in a different timeline, technically. Why are you held to the standard of a separate timeline? So,
if anything, what would happen is Samurai Jack deals the finishing blow in the old time. Then Aku ceases to exist at that time. Samurai Jack ceases to exist at the exact same moment. And if you want to be strictly correct, if everything is equal, what would actually happen is Samurai Jack would still go. Samurai Jack's blade would also cease to exist. Samurai Jack would cease to exist before he even cuts him down, and time would actually continue normally. So he would actually still get thrown into the future, and he'd come back, and then he'd defeat him, but then he'd cease to exist, which would make the reality where he came from cease to exist, which would mean he wouldn't be there in the first place to attack Aku, which means that you'd actually get sent to the future again, and it would repeat and repeat.
Well, Samurai Jack, I think, would still exist because, or at least his sword would still exist because the sword was made in the past, prior to that moment of Aku.
No, but his sword being in that place is contingent upon Samurai Jack being in that place, having gone through those circumstances. So
it's his dad, remember? His dad is who gets the sword in the first place.
No, but that still doesn't detract from the fact that if Samurai Jack hadn't gone through those circumstances in the future, that sword wouldn't be there. That sword would be in a different location. He would actually, because the original sword got sent to the future. That sword that he used it wouldn't be there. All you'd have is a nothing, because the sword wouldn't be there. Samurai Jack wouldn't be there to bring the sword. You just have nothing. You would stab.
So let me pose this question here.
Depending
if
on your
they
theory.
defeat Aku in that moment, does that mean they defeat Aku for all of time?
That's the question. It's spiritual, and that's where they get away with it, because you can say that Samurai Jack was placed there as an emissary or an avatar of these gods sent to destroy Aku throughout, I think, all time-ish. Not really, but to defeat
him before he can take over and have the future.
Well, defeat an eternal being, a supposedly eternal being, a hypothetically eternal being. So he's sent back there. So the sword having spiritual origin, Samurai Jack having spiritual origin, in that the power and the abilities and his existence he was bestowed with spiritual powers by these gods. You would say that he was given this task because he was designed for it to achieve it, along with the sword. It was designed for this purpose. Therefore, whatever circumstance, wherever, whenever, and wherever he was able to defeat Aku, it was designed for that purpose, and the gods made it so that it actually functioned that way. That's how they get away with it, in my opinion.
What would have made more sense is if Ashi took them to the future and he killed Aku in the future.
Right. But they didn't want that.
But then the idea could then be, okay, if they go into the future and Jack defeats Aku, she would no longer have a connection to Aku because Aku would cease to exist. She would then no longer have powers, and he could potentially never return back to the past.
As long as it was before she was initially
for the
created.
rest of his life,
what?
I think that's okay. I think if he's with the person that he loves for the rest of his life, I think he's okay with that.
Well, as long as it was before her creation, which would still be in the future, it would still be within that 50 last years of Samurai Jack.
Right.
If he was killed before that, but if she wanted to exist, then it would be after that. And again, the whole point of Samurai Jack going off into the distance and his whole lineage and everything, it was his role. It was created by his dad. It's a generational thing to destroy Aku. Right, and his main purpose, his main objective was to stop him from ever having from the whole timeline, from existing from the point that he got sent into the future and afterwards. That was his objective, and that was her objective apparently as well. And I think he might be satisfied with the last scene. I think he might be satisfied with the fact that he lost his love, with the fact that she would have wanted it to have happened that way, and she had love in that time, and also the fact that all those other people will now have lives to live and life to love. And I do think the ladybug might have been her as well, one of the reincarnations of her, pre-reincarnations of her, because Japan, they believe in reincarnation. It's part of I think Taoism or whatever, but they believe that people are reincarnated as new beings, and I think that there's a reason that she identified with the ladybug. I think that it's symbolism, and I believe they might also be signaling this is her as well. So he has a little bit of happiness because he sees that a version of her, or maybe a reflection of her in his eyes, continues to live.
Yeah, I think I lean less into the idea of her being like it being an actual reincarnation form of her, but definitely as far as the visual storytelling goes, it's symbolism for her and the idea of just like hope and love in general, and life continuing on after Jack's finished his purpose.
I wanted to see him fight. I wanted to see some battles after him being by the tree or whatever. I'm like, dude, you just spent like I don't know, 80 years or something, or like
He doesn't have
55
to have
years.
PTSD, okay? He can just go on and be peaceful.
He
Yeah, he
can,
could.
he can.
I
I
could
wanted
totally
to
see
see.
him just being like, "Hey, I'm just gonna, hang out with my parents and just like chill out. I'm gonna spend a lot of time drinking tea, and that's what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. Like, that's it."
I wanted
I
to see a
mean, if I'm gonna
non-Aku.
chill out under a cherry blossom tree and just like kind of sit there and chill, that's a good
Yeah,
day.
yeah, it
Guess what's
is.
not around me? Giant robot bugs that I have to
It
slice in
is.
half.
It is
I'm
good. You don't know. You don't see that far into the future. But I wanted to see him kick some butt. I wanted him to show his trainers a few things. I want to see him go, "Hey, you guys. Hey, check this out. Hey, you want to know what a gun is? You want to know how to fire a gun, everybody? Do you know what? Yeah, I wanted to see him like bust out some real
want to see
action.
how to jump hundreds of feet in the air because
I
you
wanted to
lifted
see him.
gigantic boulders on your spine.
I wanted
Let
to
me show
see
you real
him.
quick.
Yeah, I wanted to see him super progress his little town or his city or whatever. I wanted to see them like take off. He's like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna just introduce you to the Industrial Revolution real quick. Let's see how we do." That's what I wanted to see. But
Part of me also thinks, and this is obviously headcanon stuff, it's not anything explicitly shown. Part of me thinks that Jack also wants to uphold his like older values on purpose to not delve into stuff that he's really experienced in the future because it's all influenced by Aku. Like it's like the fact that they have revolvers, robots, all these different types of advanced technology, he would see that more as the darker influence of Aku on humanity, creating that kind of stuff, and less he would just see the benefits of like, oh, a revolver. This will come in handy when we get attacked. Da, 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 da. I think he would lean instead into his heritage and what he's been shown and taught, which is what he shows in the future. He's not drinking a pint glass of beer or that kind of stuff. Like when he's in his quiet moments, when he's doing things for enjoyment, he's usually just sitting quietly drinking some hot water or tea, just to like have some calm.
yeah, I think the main purpose of his existence and all the things that he fought for in the future were to create a world where it's just at peace, and he
Yeah.
doesn't have. There's none of Aku, none of any of this future existing, and he just wants everybody to be at peace and live out an existence free in freedom and without change.
I think that that's where the samurai part of this ties in. The samurai were known to be very honorable, and I'm sure that a lot of people know about their traditions and practices. But um, that I think you're absolutely correct. Like bringing anything back from this future that's completely tainted by evil, um, because Aku is the one that everybody like loves and worships. If he were to bring any of that back and teach that to his village or implement any of those things that he did, how would that make him any different from Aku? So,
Yeah.
in that whole process of things, he comes back, he loses Ashi to Aku, I guess you could say, and that's like the last thing from the future kind of connecting him to Aku.
Right.
And she even says like, without Aku, I don't exist, and then dies, and that's
And then
it.
she doesn't exist.
Yeah. She didn't die, she just like vanished.
Right.
But I think that that's kind of like the whole sentiment there, and you hit the nail on the head. Like bringing any of that back with him undoes everything that he just did and he went through. So it doesn't make sense for him to progress his village.
Right. Encourage that
Yeah.
development. Yeah.
Even though, would it be awesome? Would it be super cool to see him take out like armies of dudes because he obviously can? Yes.
I want
But
to.
at the same time, that's not who he is as a person. He's like, I was doing that for the specific purpose of ending evil. this is just people being people. And so I could see him instead becoming uh not even necessarily like the standard samurai, which is a person there to protect a village and that kind of stuff. I could see him being more of just like a peacekeeper in general.
His sword was meant to fight evil. It wasn't just meant to fight Aku, even though Aku was the the incarnation of evil or whatever. But like there is other evil in the world besides Aku, and I think like if they wanted to, they could spin off another series.
I wanted that.
They could add another season and kind of explore that idea. But I think with where it's at right now, it's a decent ending, decent enough. Definitely bittersweet. I would have preferred Ashi live on.
You prefer actual sweet instead of bittersweet?
Yeah, I mean, she was part human, so
like how much of her was human?
She had to have a mom, right?
Yeah.
I learned to like the show. The show that I really liked was maybe 4th season and 5th season. That's what I really liked.
Sure.
The first, or maybe even 3rd, but it was the first 2, not so much really. But I thought they told a good story, and it came to a nice place at the end. I thought that they ended
nice.
it.
Are you kidding me?
Huh?
So that wasn't nice. Are you kidding me?
Oh, nice is in like it was a good story. Like they
ripped your heart out.
Yeah.
Well, that's life, you know. Things happen.
Ripped your heart out.
Yeah. People die.
Having watched the entire series,
it's another thing is this is a common story with people who go off to other countries to fight wars. You come back and you've experienced a ton of loss and trauma and stuff, and you come back to the place and sometimes you find that those connections that you had and that thing that you thought was most precious to you, it's dead or it's gone, and you lose friends and stuff, and you come back and all you have is a peaceful place that you return to with all the memories of the terrible life that you had before, and you can't really share it with anybody, and you're just alone there, just knowing that I did the job that I had to do, and I come back and I bear the pain, I bear the hurt and the I bear the trauma so that all these people don't, which is accurate. So that's another reason why I think it's nice. Not nice, but it's terrible, but
I mean, I think the show the show throughout, I am very pleasantly surprised by the fact that Genndy Tartakovsky got to tell his entire story. It's a shame the original voice actor for Aku passed away before they could finish the series. The guy who takes over for him is solid, really, really solid. But I just really, really love the fact that it's a very concise story. It reminds me, like I've spoken about Hellboy, Mike Mignola told his story. He told the character he wanted to tell. You can find the entire series back to back. Boom, this is Hellboy. Same thing with Samurai Jack. There's not stuff pulling him back in, taking him into other places. There's no chance to ruin the character or ruin the story, which I find really, really nice. It's a very pure tale of just Jack trying to stop evil, goes in forward in time, continues to meet people, create connections, stop things, help things, and then by the end of it, he finds love and ultimately has to sacrifice that love for the greater good of his mission. I think it's awesome. I really liked it. Was there any other like characters in particular that you guys can remember that really stood out to you that you really enjoyed?
The blue teddy bear thing that turns into the big red monster that rips apart the machines.
The
was pretty
the
cool.
werebear thing.
Yeah.
I liked Angus or whatever his name was. I
The
forget his name.
Scotsman, yeah.
Yeah, I dug him, and I also liked Ashi, I think, and then I don't know, like maybe some generic helper character somewhere in there through the course of the show.
I thought the
I was gonna
dogs
say,
were pretty cool.
yeah, the dogs.
Oh, the dogs at the
I
beginning.
say, old boy. Oh
I
yes.
hated those. They were like
Did
my
you really?
least. They were some of my least favorite characters. Yeah, I hate them.
Why?
I
Because
really, I actually felt
not.
horrible. Uh, they're very, very minor characters in the episode with where they're doing the uh uh they do the giant monster fight with Jack goes to a city that is destroyed or in shambles, and you find out there's this giant mech, this like 30 something stories tall building size robot that's just been destroying everything. And there's these two little robots that are like, oh, he has to escape. There's no escape from this robot. He's going to die. And then they realize, oh, he's the chosen one. Um, and these two simple little robots end up showing up in the final fight in the last episode, and it's like, yes, so cool. But they end up actually dying, and those two characters I actually was like really sad to see get destroyed. Um,
They're
even
nuts
though
and bolts.
robots are nuts and bolts, they're free game in this show to get destroyed. But it felt sad seeing like good guys that were like there to help get destroyed by Aku's evil like giant spikes raining out of the sky. But also that might be one of my favorite episodes. I was re-watching certain select episodes before I finished the final season, just to kind of do a refresher. And one that I specifically watched was that one with their version of a giant robot, and then Jack swims to the bottom of an ocean and finds a massive samurai suit uh, that's like made out of stone at the same time, and it's so boss, so cool. He's just like fights it, and then it's shooting at him with like huge, gigantic rounds, and it's bouncing off of his armor, and then finally he just like crushes it, and thing
The enemy giant
explodes.
robot.
Huh?
The enemy giant robot.
Yeah, the enemy giant robot gets its main chest cannon crushed by Jack's giant stone fist, and then it blows itself up through its own expulsion of energy. So awesome.
Well, if it helps, it's just a couple more deaths in the millions and maybe billions of deaths that have occurred because of Aku. Just like Ashi, she's just one more death. And what you're really doing is you're seeing the prevention of these millions and billions of deaths or whatever.
That's true. They cease to exist, so in a way, they never died. Yeah.
But shouldn't we be happy about Ashi? I think that's the point. You should be happy that she dies.
Brutal. The end of the show is brutal. Like the fact that you see Jack responding to death and he kills a person for the first time, and how like much it messes with him, and how he's like, that's blood.
I should say that was one of the most unbelievable parts of the show to me. That it's then that he kills a person and he feels bad. Come on, really? After all the fights he's in,
he's fighting robots, man.
Yeah.
A lot of robots.
Not one person gets mixed in
the dead, and yeah.
Yeah, there's not someone, a random bystander that's walking around in a robot town. He gets hit in the crossfire. I don't know.
He's that good. He's that good at what he does. All right. Also, speaking of bounty hunter robots, a character that I actually warmed up to, not counting the Scotsman, who is a boss Scottish dude with bagpipes and a giant machine gun leg, Scaramouche, the guy that's introduced in the fifth season.
The rhymer.
Yeah, and he has a tuning fork sword that can actually like make stuff vibrate to a point of exploding. I thought he was kind of annoying, and they're clearly doing like a Bob Hope impression for some reason. Um, but I also kind of love it now. After I rewatched it, I was just like, this is ridiculous. And I think it's great.
It is.
So I really love the show for like they go in such weird directions, and there's clear influences with like even the dogs in like the first or second episode. You're that Cranberry Landers obviously hates those characters, but I'm also looking at it from the perspective they're kind of making fun of like Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
That's
And
like good crap.
exactly. And
by the way, I
think it's
wanted to
great.
say this. They were obviously huge fans of Star Wars throughout the entire series. It was so blatant. I was literally predicting
yeah.
lines in like one of the shows. I'm like, all right, I might as well just watch Star Wars here.
Was there anything wrong with those
isn't a
episodes?
fan of
No,
Star
they were
Wars?
great.
What?
Who isn't
I
a
Was there
fan of
any-
Star Wars?
Yeah, I love Star Wars.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with those episodes. They're great, even though they're
they play
blatantly-
well for samurai jacked versions of Star Wars.
They samurai jacked a lot of material from all these different sources, and I am okay with it.
Well played.
Yeah, the show I think overall is just so awesome. I'm really glad you finally got to watch it, Cranberry Landers, and The Cape is a Lie. You finally finished this final season. Any final thoughts?
Like cutting the close, you know. You got.
Like I said, I tried to stay up and watch it, and I couldn't do it. I had work, so I was like, I'll do this when I get home, and then I got home a little too late. So
the show, I will say,
and
is also weirdly relaxing for a show that has this much action. Like, I find it kind of tranquil, which is
yeah, that's a good point. It really is. Like, you don't get like hyped up like watching the fight scenes. You're like, oh, that's kind of a cool scene, but it's not like, oh yeah, you know. It's just
although
like,
there's a couple.
Cool.
But it's also like
there's a couple where it's like, like the set fight, the set minions.
oh
like,
yeah.
That one was like, oh geez, he's like really getting his butt kicked. I'm like, I'm tuned in, like, what's going on? Like, oh, is he gonna die? But no, like he can't die. He's the main hero, but he definitely gets jacked up.
He gets jacked. I think, yeah, I really enjoy the show for the fact that it walks a very fine edge of both being really beautiful and like tranquil while also having like crazy intense action scenes.
And it's
and
got a well-built story.
Say that again?
It's got a well-built story.
Yeah. And a lot of it is through visual storytelling. Like, I know, Cranberry, you were saying that you kind of wished for a little bit more dialogue. I personally appreciate it because of its restraint in dialogue. When there is a character...
I would have preferred more dialogue, but I did find an appreciation for the lack of it throughout, because it's actually more realistic. I mean, you're not going to have a samurai going around blabbing all the time while he's trying to do like stealthy attacks and like just get by and everything. He's a loner. He's not going to be just talking to himself all the time. So yeah, I actually appreciated it, and it's more realistic than a lot of modern shows and movies and stuff.
Could you imagine a samurai walking around yelling out stealth attack every time they're going to attack somebody when they're hiding?
It's a ninja star.
It'd be much more of a comedy, and I would actually
and a Judy chop.
Yeah, sneak attack. Pops from above.
Sneaking. I'm sneaking.
You got me. And if he's still successful, that's an even better samurai. That's an even better ninja.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I appreciated it. I appreciate it very much for what it is. I think it had a very big impact in animation, cartoons, and in kind of the modern era. I think it was one of the forerunners for what's currently out there. And I think that they really the final season, the fifth season, really exemplified, or the show came into its own at that time, and yeah, I really appreciate it. So,
I don't know if you guys know the answer to this, but which came first, Samurai Jack or um, Avatar?
Samurai Jack.
Yeah, Samurai Jack.
Really?
By about, I think, like 6 or 7 years.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Avatar, I believe, the first season came out like 2007, 2006, 2007. And then Samurai Jack was like right after 2000, 2001.
Avatar had to have been earlier than 2007 because I think like 2007, 2008. Well, maybe it was like
I think 2005.
2010 because there was like Legend of Korra, which was like the second Avatar story, I guess,
Oh
that
yeah,
came out
it's
around that time.
it's actually 2005
Okay.
Oh, I was right.
for Avatar, and then Samurai
Right.
Jack started in 2001.
You were right, Cranberry Landers.
I was right.
I was right.
Yeah. I thought it came out around mid. It's around the middle of Cartoon Network kind of timeness. Yeah.
It's interesting, kind of the timeline, because I think they finished the first 4 seasons, basically the show of Samurai Jack, I think right before Avatar would have started.
Yeah.
You know what I like about Samurai Jack? No cape.
No cape.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I like how they instead of leaning towards the fantastical, they went more towards the realism side. And I thought that was one thing that actually took me out of the first 2 or so seasons. The fact that there was so much like aliens and creatures, anthropomorphized animals and stuff like that. I just liked the fact that it leaned into the kind of more ninja-esque kind of stuff, the more realistic stuff, even though they still had talking robots and all that. So, but yeah, I appreciate it. Good job forcing me to watch this.
Yes. Now you understand. That's good. Yeah, I really like the universe in general, how they establish the characters, and even the goofier, like more cartoony stuff. I think is a cool juxtaposition to the more hardcore, like serious samurai fare. And I think it's what makes the show a little bit more unique. It's not just wolf and cub and that kind of stuff. It's actually his own character, his own story. He's dealing with his own adventures and misadventures. He's making weird friends that are, oh, we're sea creature people. Oh, we're a guy that's raised by apes who's basically like a giant ball version of Tarzan and that kind of stuff. But it all is for a purpose ultimately, which I really, really appreciate.
That was another group that I hated. The monkeys.
I know.
I hated. Just their design, actually. But yeah, and the talking. But I mean,
just the way that they look and the way that they talk and who they are as people. That's just it. That's the only part I didn't like.
Yeah. I wasn't a fan. I wasn't a fan of that, and I was completely with The Cape is a Lie for the first part of the show. The animation style really did. I mean, it was like they almost got to the style that I would have liked, almost. And then the fifth season, I actually saw, oh, this is actually how I'd like it to look. But yeah, before that, it's just like, there were great scenes for sure, get great sequences throughout the series. But yeah, the animation,
I
hit
think
or
about
miss,
the time
mostly miss.
they started hitting season 3, you started to get a little bit better design in there.
Yeah.
And then season 4, definitely palatable. Season 5, by far the best. But I do think like having that significant time gap, a little bit more freedom in your creative style helps with all that. When you've got somebody else kind of running things behind the curtains, it's kind of hard to get what you want and make it appealing to your fan base.
Bigger budget, and yeah, the older fan base definitely helps with being able to go to those places they wanted to with the blood.
Yeah, it's no longer Cartoon Network. It was basically the Adult Swim version instead, where they take everything that you've seen before, but go, oh, but we know who our audience is. We know who the kids were that were watching this show to begin with, and all of them are now almost 30. Let's show them what they've been waiting for, and
the
cool stuff.
Yeah, the adult kissy times. You know what I'm saying?
Adult kissy times.
It's the cherry blossom on top.
These kinds of yeah. They should have mated before. Oh no, then this kid had died too. Never mind.
Yeah, that'd be even worse. Thank you.
All right.
So
hey,
I'm glad you guys got to watch it, got to enjoy Samurai Jack. Was there any other final thoughts on what you guys would like to discuss about the show, or should we just tease a little bit of what's coming?
I think we could tease a little bit of what's coming. I do have a question for you. We brought up 2D platformers earlier. Did you ever finish your game?
I still have not finished Braid. It is so hard. I'm very stupid when it comes to video games. I almost didn't beat Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. I finally was just like, all right, let's do it. And I hunkered down. But when I have time, I want to finally finish Braid because it is awesome. Speaking of which, for time, our next time is going to be the episode for Halloween. Very exciting. It's going to be a real spook fest, not only in subject, but also in who's going to be doing this with us. So we are going to keep it at that, but rest assured we're going to be discussing some very cool SCP stuff, talking about this kind of new form of storytelling on the internet for spooky tales and scary stuff. And then also you might see
that pasta looks creepy.
What?
That pasta looks creepy.
It's not new. It's been around forever. SCP. But yeah, to you, maybe it's new. Yeah, I get you.
I'm saying as far as the digital landscape, it's new. It's something that was created through the internet, has a community cultivated by the internet, and we're going to be talking about that
Slenderman
in the next episode. The Slendermans. So it's very exciting. Thanks for watching. Again, I have been the Wilhelm Scream.
Gabe's a lie.
Cranberry Langers.
And you just got nerdified.
Nerds.
Talk to you later.